And we are live on our webinar for the Teaching Reading 5205. I'm just going to give everybody a second to come into the webinar, and I'm going to check Facebook really quickly to make sure that I am live, and it looks like I am. So good. We're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we're live in the webinar. So really quickly, if you're watching this on social media and not in the actual webinar, you can use the link in the description to sign up, and you will gain access to the study guide that I'll be going over today and an offer code and all of that. So just let me know in the chat that you can hear me okay, that you can see me, and that we have started the webinar. I'm actually watching right now on my own phone to make sure everything is going okay, and it looks like we are live. So I'll just give it a second for everybody to come in and just explain a little bit about what is going to happen today. So today I'm going through the Teaching Reading 5205, and I'm going to be using my Teaching Reading book. So this is the Teal book. You can get it on my website. You can get it on Amazon. And we're going to be using the information from that study guide and also the study companion and stuff like that. So it does look like people are coming in, and just let me know if you can hear me all right and see me. Looks like we got about 50 people in the webinar and a few people live online. So glad you guys are here. Now, the Teaching Reading Exam 5205 and other teaching reading exams are used for people who are content area teachers who need to get reading certified in their content area. Some states require teachers to get certified in teaching reading because there's such a reading deficit in our country. I mean, it's because we're over testing students, but that's another webinar. But anyways, lots of teachers have to get certified in reading. So whether you're a social studies teacher or a science teacher or whatever, a lot of you will have to be certified in reading. And some of you don't have a reading background. And so this test can be very hard. And so that's why I'm doing this today. So we're working out of this book. But again, if you don't have this book, I have everything projected on the screen and all of that. All right, looks like everybody can hear me. Good morning, guys. So glad you're spending your Saturday with me. I'm going to try to keep this to under an hour, but I always want to answer everybody's questions. And so sometimes it goes a little longer than that. So if you're having any technical difficulties, you can just refresh your screen and that will pop everything in. It looks like people can hear me just fine. And if you can't see me, then just go ahead and refresh your screen and come in and log back in. Sometimes things get messed up with your cache and your cookies and all of that. All right. So with the chat, if you're chatting on Facebook or YouTube, I can't really see it right now, but I will get to your questions. And if you are chatting in the chat, then I will get to those questions periodically throughout the webinar. So let me just send a quick chat. All right. So again, Teaching Reading 5205, and we're going to get started here. So there's a couple of things to think about when we are going through this test. First of all, the study companion is your number one thing. And I always talk about this when I prep people for the exams. A lot of people skip this document, and it is the most important document you can use. So I have a little backstory on this. When I was a curriculum teacher with my district, a very large testing company came in to train us on how to write how to write common assessments for students in the district so that they were prepared for the big test at the end of the year. And the number one thing that this large testing company did was train us on how to use the blueprint and the specifications to structure questions. And so for this exam and any big exam built by a large testing company, there is always a test spec. Now, I break up the test spec in my book. So in front of each section of the book, there is the spec. So you have an understanding of what it is. But I'm just going to hop over to the ETS study companion really quickly to make sure that you know where to access this and you can see it, because this should be your first stop whenever studying for any teacher certification exam. All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you there. So You should be able to see this on the screen. This is the Praxis ETS Study Companion. The cover of it looks like this. All you have to do is Google your test name and then Study Companion, and it will come up. Disregard all the ads and stuff for study guides. Go straight to this document. This is the document that the testing company puts out, and ETS does a really good job in providing so much information for this exam. So please don't ignore this document. This is where all the information is. Now you can see here, this is what we call a blueprint. All right. And the blueprint has this little pie chart here, and it goes through, everything about the exam. So it's talks about, the actual test name. Then it has how much time you have. Now, this particular exam is timed all at once, meaning that if you gain some extra time on your selected response, so let's say you kind of get through the selected response in pretty good time, you can use that time for your constructed response questions. And there are 3 of those. You can see that. So basically 3 essay questions at the end of the test. So, you can use some time that you've gained on one section in the other section. All right. Now, there are 6 content categories. So those are the major components of the exam. So we have phonological and phonemic awareness. These are the foundational reading skills. This is a really important part of the test. And we want to make sure that we have a really good understanding of this, because these questions are scenario based and you're going to have to understand that. We're also going to get into phonics and decoding, other foundational skills. And then we move into vocabulary and fluency. And then finally, the big skills here, comprehension, which is the ultimate. That's what we want students to have, is comprehension. And then writing. And so these foundational skills here, phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding, and vocabulary and fluency, all build upon each other in order for students to comprehend and to write. Now, just a quick note here. Notice that when I talk about these types of skills, we're always talking about building on top of other skills. And so the comprehension and the writing part, if you're visualizing like a Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge, these are higher order skills. Comprehension has a lot to do with critical thinking, predicting, metacognition, all of those processes, and so does writing. And so these foundational skills are going to build on that. And then the very last section is going to be your writing section, where you're going to have to write to an essay, and we'll talk more about that. Now, beyond this blueprint piece, then we get into the test specifications. And I really love the ETS test specs. They do such a good job. So you can see that under this major content category here, phonological and phonemic awareness, we have all of this information here. This is what we call fair game on the exam. And that means that these subcategories, or these more specific topics, are going to be in the questions, and the words in these specifications are going to be in the correct answer choices on the test. And I call those good words. And we're going to go into more of that in just a minute. But if you want to know how to pass this exam, you need to explore these test specs. And beyond that, another thing they do at ETS that I just love is they have these discussion questions here. And these are critical thinking questions about the topics on the exam. And this is really, really good to have, because if you can answer these questions, then you can pass the exam. If you're just taking, multiple choice practice tests over and over and over again, you're not really getting the understanding of the content and the skills that are required for this exam. So I highly recommend you check out the study companion. As you can see here, it's very in-depth. There are some practice test questions that they have here. They're very good. You can have a look at those and see how they are structured. And then, of course, there's some constructed response practice. Now, in my teaching reading book, so this is my book here by Kathleen Jasper, I have the blueprint, and then in front of each section, as you can see here, I break down the test specifications. So I always have them in my book because that's how important they are. We will be going over some of the things in my book. You can also see that in the book. Let me go back to the table of contents here. I have the actual section, and then I have practice problems specific for this particular section. And then I have decoding, phonics and decoding, and then I have practice problems specific for that. And then, of course, at the end of it, I always have very detailed answer explanations. When you are taking the practice test, it's very important for you to read this information in the answer explanations because it'll help you understand why you got something right and why you got something wrong. Okay. And knowing why you got something right is just as important as why you got something wrong. So really evaluate that. And then, of course, I have 2 full practice tests at the end of the book with, let me just scroll down here, detailed answer explanations. And I even tell you what category they come from. You can see here, this column here tells you this is from content category 1. These are from content category 3. And so that helps you understand the types of questions you're getting and why you get them wrong and why you got them correct. And then, of course, I always have, where's my good words list? It's at the beginning before the practice test. Hang on, please. Where are you? Let me go back to my, it's a big book. So let me go back here. Good words list. We're going to talk about good words in a second, but this good words list in the back of the book, these are the words you're going to see in the correct answer choices. So it would behoove you to get to know these words and definitions. It's sort of like a little glossary in the back here. Definitely recommend having a look at that. And then I have a little list of bad words that'll show you some words to stay away from in the answer choices. And I have some specific examples that we're going to be going over today with that. So let me just hop back here and make sure we're good. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? If you do, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm so glad you guys are here. So that's kind of the overview of the exam. You got to understand those content categories. You got to understand those specifications and dig in. Taking practice tests over and over again is not going to get you to the goal of passing the exam. This one's tough. This one's got a lot of scenario questions. It's got a lot of, long answer choices and things like that. And that's why we're going to use good words, bad words, and we're going to work backwards. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. All right. Looks like everybody's okay in the chat. You guys are all just hanging out with me, listening. Perfect. Perfect. So let me hop over to my presentation. There are a couple things I want you to understand before we get started on the actual test questions. All right. So let's go here. All right, so these are my good words, bad words. And again, these are in the back of the book as well. I pulled some of the main ones for this particular slide, but I have probably 50 of them in the back of the book. So, but these are the most important that you'll see on this particular exam. So let's talk about good words really quickly. When we're talking about reading instruction, we are really working on that differentiated instruction because you're going to have students who are above level, on level, below level. You're going to have kids that are right on level, meaning they have the possibility of slipping below. And we don't want that. We want to make sure we're pushing those kids to higher levels of reading. Now, of course, those who are not reading on grade level, we're going to use targeted interventions. That's the second good set of words. And that's when we are zoning in on specific deficits that students have, and we're intervening there. Well, how do we do that? We do that through formative assessment. We do that through diagnostic assessments. And in the study guide, you'll see a whole section on assessments. I have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about assessments. But with reading instruction, we're constantly progress monitoring, we're diagnosing, we're differentiating instruction, we're making instructional decisions on all of that. And so we want to make sure we're targeting those interventions based on the skills that students are missing. Because remember, these are foundational skills. So one kid might have a problem with phonemic awareness. Another kid might have a problem with vocab. Another kid might have a problem with decoding because they're in these beginning stages. And it's kind of a hodgepodgey smorgasbord of skills and, needs. And so we need to make sure we're targeting those. Then, of course, we're always building in those scaffolds, supports. Scaffolding just basically means that there is a benchmark here that students need to meet, right? We don't lower the benchmark because that benchmark is what they're assessed on at the end of the year. So what we need to do is build in supports to help those students who are struggling meet that benchmark. And again, that could be small group instruction. That could be one-to-one instruction. That could be targeted interventions in vocabulary. It could be whole group. Maybe your whole class is struggling with some sort of vocab or something like that. So it just depends. You got to make those decisions as a reading teacher. And of course, those decisions should be driven by your data analysis, which is our fourth good word. And this is for any teacher certification exam. So we want to make sure we're not just going on a gut feeling, although as teachers, our gut feelings are very important, but we want to make sure we're using different types of data, and it comes in all shapes and sizes. So qualitative data, which is usually your formative data from formative assessments. Those are informal checks. So walking around the room and observing, that's collecting data. That's observational data. Talking to your students and, asking them a question, that's collecting data. Sometimes you ask students a question and that gleans a lot of information for you. So that's important. Exit slips, quick checks, fluency reads. These are all collecting formative pieces of data that you can then use to make decisions. Now, beyond that, we have state test data, that quantitative data, things that can be quantified in numbers. So state tests, benchmark tests, anything where you're collecting scores and there's a breakdown of the scores for the students. So both sets of data are very important. We use them together to make instructional decisions, and we want to make sure we're doing that on this exam. And then, of course, at the end of this good words list is our evidence-based strategies. So we make up a lot of stuff as teachers on the fly, and that's totally good. I love it. But on this test and in your practice, you want to make sure that you are using evidence-based strategies. Well, what does that mean? That means somewhere someone has done a study or multiple studies, and it has shown that these things work. And so there is evidence to support that whatever strategy we're doing actually works. All right. So we take those good words and those good practices and we mush them all together, and hopefully we have an effective reading teacher, right? But on this exam, be on the lookout for those words and also phrases that allude to those words. Like for differentiated instruction, it might say something like break the students up by ability and use targeted interventions that way, or use specific strategies, right? So that's differentiated instruction and targeted interventions. Scaffolding might sound like support for specific students who are struggling. Data-driven decisions might look like look over test scores or observe the class or walk around the room and make decisions. Those are data-driven decisions. And then, of course, evidence-based might be where you find a strategy that has worked in a study and things like that. So it may not say exactly data-driven decisions, but make sure you're on the lookout for scenarios that kind of support that type of teaching. And then the bad words, you want to stay away from these on the test. Anything that says relying on the reading coach or other teachers. Now, do we rely on the reading coach in real world? Yeah, sure we do. Do we ask our peer teacher for help? Absolutely. But on this test, it's assessing your ability as a teacher to work on this stuff in your classroom. So we want to make sure that we're handling it. It's on us, not parents, not other teachers, not the reading coach, not the administrators. The other thing you want to stay away from is anything that says worksheets. On this test, worksheets is a bad word. Do we use worksheets in the real world? Absolutely. But it's not going to be the best way to teach reading. Extra homework, silent sustained reading, two bad words on these exams. The reason being is that this exam has to do with students who are struggling with reading. And extra homework and silent sustained reading is not going to help those who are struggling, right? So if you're struggling to read a passage and I say, okay, go read it on your own, that's not going to work, right? So typically silent sustained reading for students who are struggling is not a good word. Now, there could be a question about using silent sustained reading to increase student cognitive ability and things like that. And that might be okay. But for students who are struggling, extra homework and silent sustained reading, bad word. And then, of course, you might get questions where there's some extrinsic motivation in the answer choices, like give the kids a piece of candy or give the kids a reward or put a chart on the wall. I'm sure some of you have been around long enough where we had those data charts on the walls, and I call them shame charts because you have the kids that are always good at reading and they're at the top, and the kids who have always struggled, they're down at the bottom, and every day they got to walk past the data and see that they are at the bottom yet again. So I highly recommend you don't use those in your classroom, although a lot of principals require them and some districts require them because sometimes districts don't look at the research that shows that those types of splattering of personal data on the wall is not always good for students who are struggling to read. It's not a race. It's not a game. It's not a competition. Everybody learns differently and reads at different levels, especially when we're talking about elementary. And that's what we're going through today. All right. So those are the good words. Now, the next thing I always show my reading peeps is my phonological awareness umbrella. And this will help you kind of distinguish between or among phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics, because they're all PH words and they kind of all have to do with the foundational skills or fundamental skills of reading. They tend to get jumbled and mushed up. Okay. So the way I like to think about it is phonological awareness is the umbrella. It is the overarching skill that encompasses lots of skills. And then under that umbrella are specific skills, phonemic awareness and phonics. So let's break those down first before we get to phonological awareness. So phonemic awareness is going to be sounds only in words. And I just did a bunch of videos on this. I have some YouTube shorts and some TikTok videos in a 1 minute or fewer tutorial on this. But phonemic awareness is all about the sounds. And when I was getting my reading endorsement, the woman teaching it had a really good way of talking about it. She said, you can do phonemic awareness in the dark. You don't have to see the word. You don't have to, look at the word on the paper. You can close your eyes and you can do phonemic awareness because it's just about the sounds and words. So if I were using the sound bat or the word bat, and I said, how many sounds in the word bat? Students could close their eyes and go, ba-at. 3 sounds. I didn't have to see the letters. I didn't have to look at the word. I know that there are 3 sounds. And beyond that, we can do things like, okay, take away the beginning sound in bat. What do you have? And the kids might go, at. That's a deletion activity. That's phonemic awareness. You don't have to see it and cross it out on the paper. You can just see it in your mind, hear it. And actually, you don't even have to see it in your mind. You can just listen to those sounds and go, ba-at. Eliminate the first sound, at. Those are phonemic awareness activities, right? Now, phonics, you actually have to see the word. Phonics is letter-sound correspondence. So, for example, in the word phonics, you can see here, there's a P and an H together, right? Well, when I see a P and an H together in English, I know that makes a F sound or an F sound. That's a rule. That's a rule for English. If I see an A and then a K and then an E, like in the word make, I know the A is long because if I have a vowel, consonant, silent E, I know that the A is going to be long. Well, that is a rule in phonics, and they're all different for all different languages. In ours, in English, we have certain rules. And so that's letter sound correspondence, and you have to see the word, right? So phonemic awareness, do it in the dark, can't see the word, it sounds only. And then phonics, you have to actually see the word. Now, phonological awareness brings all of that together where you understand the sounds and words. You can segment the words by syllables. You have letter sound correspondence. You are putting it all together to have this overarching awareness. And that's kind of how I like to talk to people about phonological awareness, phonics, and phonemic awareness. This diagram is in my book, and I also have lots of videos on this particular concept, so feel free to check that out. Now let's go through another thing on this exam you're going to want to understand is the continuum of phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. So beyond just knowing that these are foundational skills or fundamental skills, you kind of have to know how they evolve and grow. And you will have questions that ask you, what stage of phonemic awareness is this student in? Or what should be the next stage of phonemic awareness? And that's why doing practice tests over and over again may not help you in this, because these types of questions are very nuanced. You have to really understand that. So here is a diagram. And again, I have this in the book as well. I just made it different colors, so it was a little more aesthetically pleasing for my presentation. But think of it as like steps that build along. And now when we do these diagrams, we tend to think of like linear processes of learning. And really, we know as teachers that learning is much more fluid and kind of in and out. But when we are talking about acquiring skills, typically we're looking at it in this linear fashion or this step-by-step fashion. And so you can see here that the simplest form of phonemic awareness is phoneme isolation. So if I said to you, how many sounds in the word bat, and you went b, a, t, I'm isolating each sound. That's phoneme isolation. Then when I blend it all together, bat, that's blending. Segmentation, we might take pieces of the word. What's the last part of the word? At. What's the first part of the word? B. If it's like stick, I might say, what's the first two sounds in the word? St. You might just segment out that word. Now with addition, same thing, we're adding to the word. So let's say the word is rat. I'm just making up words here, you guys. So maybe it's rat, R-A-T, and then maybe I say add a P to that, and they would say prat. Now, some of these will be nonsense words. A lot of times in the beginning stages, we use what we call nonsense words, and we just are adding sounds to other endings. That's okay, because we're just talking about sounds in words. And then deletion, take away a sound. And then the highest level, this is important, is phoneme. It's called phoneme manipulation or substitution. This one is the highest part because you have to understand your phonemic awareness before you can start substituting out sounds for other sounds. And that's why it's at the top. So if I said something like, okay, let's say the word play, and they say play, and I say, let's say the word play, and they say play, and I say, okay, I want you to switch the pull sound with a st sound. So they think for a second and they go, stay. So they had to isolate the PL sound, the pull sound, and then they had to make sure that they substituted it in with a new st sound. That is much more complex. And so that's why it's at the top. So make sure you understand that. Now, we also have a continuum for phonological awareness, which is kind of more skills encompassing. We have the bottom is rhyme, and rhyme is a phonemic awareness activity as well. If I said, okay, we're going to say the word top, and they say top, and I say, okay, what's another word that rhymes with top? And they start thinking, and they're like, mop, pop, and they start to hear all these sounds that sound the same in a rhyme. And so that is down at the bottom. Maybe alliteration, all the words that have the same starting sound, six, squiggly, snakes. Then in phonological awareness, you get into sentence segmentation, which is more complex, obviously, because we're dealing with more than one word. And then beyond that, we have syllable segmentation, where we're actually breaking up the words not by sounds, but by syllables, which is more complex. And then we have onset and rhyme blending. Now remember, the onset of the word is the consonant or consonant cluster, like as in rope here. Hopefully you can see that. The and rope. If it were stop, the onset is st, the first consonant or consonant cluster sound. And then the rhyme, and it's spelled R-I-M-E, is the ending vowel and consonant sound. So in stop, the onset is st, and the rhyme is op. And breaking that up is even harder than breaking up in syllables, because syllables kind of have a pause or inflection at the end of it that indicate a syllable is happening. With onset rhyme blending, it doesn't have that. And then we get to phoneme blending and manipulation here with our CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. These words, understanding that the A is long and make, understanding that two consonants next to a vowel make it short, those types of things, much more complex. So make sure you understand those particular continuums. There are stages in which this all happens. All right. So now I'm just going to take any questions. If anybody has any questions about that, go ahead and throw that in the chat and I'll do my best to answer you. Remember, these things are important to understand because the scenario questions on the exam are going to ask you to identify the best strategy. And what happens is people who are new to reading, teaching, and people who are not used to these teacher certification exams, they look at the answers and they say, well, all of these could be the right answer. And that's not true, because the question is asking you, what is the best approach? What is the most effective way to do whatever it is it's asking you to do? So we want to make sure that we're, drilling down and making sure that we know that. And by knowing the continuum of phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, understanding the good words, bad words, working backwards will help you do that. All right. Well, it doesn't look like anybody's got any questions, so we'll just go ahead and move on. I'm going to share my screen with you here, and we're going to move in to some practice test questions. So again, we're working on the teaching reading. And so now I'm going to teach you guys all of this in context, meaning we're actually going to do it looking at test questions here. All right, so you can see that this is our first test question. Oh, really quickly as well. The number here corresponds with the number in the study guide. So if you're following along in the study guide, you will see me go through this, and I skip around a little bit. I'm not going to do all of the ones in the study guide, but I have them labeled here. And if you don't have the study guide in front of you, it's okay. It was emailed to you when you signed up, and it was on the thank you page when you filled out the form. The link in the description of this video, everywhere on social and in the webinar, will get you to the sign up form so you can get the free study guide. But you don't need it right now because I'm projecting it. So if you just want to watch this and then download the study guide later, you can do that. All right. So this is number one. And of course, I am going to start with the answer choices first. We're going to work backwards on these. All right. So students can remember all 26 letters in the alphabet. Well, right away, I can kind of cross this one out because that's really not a good teaching strategy. Yeah, it's good that they understand the letters of the alphabet, but kind of remembering them, what does that have to do with anything? Not the best practice. I'm going to cross it out for now. B, students can trace letters properly with their fingers. Okay, that's part of the beginning stages of learning letters. I like it. Okay, I'm not going to make it my number one, but I'm going to just leave it. C, students can associate pictures with letters on flashcards. Okay, that's part of the pre-alphabetic stage. Before we understand words, we'll often associate with pictures. So I'll leave it there. And D, students can spell phonetically using their letter sound correspondence. Well, if I'm looking at my test specs that I talked about in the beginning, these words are in the test specs. Spelling phonetically, letter sound correspondence. So right now, D is looking like my very best answer, but I need to read the question because I can't narrow it down enough to get it without reading the question. So let's go here. Which of the following exercises would demonstrate students are beginning to understand the alphabetic principle? Now, of course, A has the word alphabet, but remembering 26 letters in the alphabet, no, that's not going to give them the alphabetic principle. Tracing letters properly with their fingers, that is a pre-alphabetic stage. That's not part of the alphabetic principle, and so is associating it with pictures. That's all pre-alphabetic. If we are beginning in the alphabetic stage and the alphabetic principle, we know that the letters and words make sounds. And so we're working on our letter sound correspondence, or phonics. And when students spell phonetically, it's so cute when they do this. They say things like, I was there. They might spell like this. And that is the beginning stages of spelling and writing sentences. And it's part of the alphabetic principle. It is incorrect, obviously. But what this tells me is that the student understands the sounds in words. And when they can spell like this, that means they are getting to that letter sound correspondence. And that's why D is the correct answer there. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Starting with the answer choices here, identifying the beginning sounds in words. I know that's phonemic. Clapping syllables in words. Okay, that's going to be more of morphology when we're breaking down words, probably a structural analysis where we're trying to figure out the actual syllables in words, and could be a little bit of phonological awareness. We saw that on the continuum that we looked at earlier. Identify the ending sounds in words. Okay, I have sounds. Deleting sounds in words, sounds. So I have A, C, and D are all sounds in words. So let's read the question stem here. Which of the following would not be a systematic instructional strategy used for phonemic awareness? Well, we said phonemic awareness is sounds in words. And so clapping syllables is more about word parts rather than individual sounds and words. And so B would be the correct answer because it is not a systematic strategy used in phonemic awareness. Remember, phonemic awareness is sounds only. Syllables kind of talk about the structure of the word, and that's not phonemic awareness. Do you have to have phonemic awareness to do that? Yeah, sure. But we're talking about systematic instructional strategies for phonemic awareness. And again, just thinking like a test maker here, I got sounds in one, sounds. I'm looking for the one that doesn't fit, and that's going to be B. And you will see those types of patterns on the exam all the time, okay? All right, let's have a look at this one here. So we've got a little diagram. We'll start here. Can't do much. I got syllables, phoneme sequencing, onset and rhyme, and silent letters. All right, let's look at the chart. I always work backwards the whole time. So we have the spelling word is sign, and they wrote it sing. The spelling word is depend, and they wrote it depned. And the spelling word is girl, and they wrote it grill. Okay, so we have a problem here. Well, what's going on? We know it's not syllables. There's 2 syllables in this word here, but the rest of them only have 1 syllable. So I can probably cross out syllables. Phoneme sequencing. Well, is the sequence out of sync? Yeah, these are all the right way to do it. And these are all done, out of order. So phoneme sequencing looks like it's my best one here. Onset and rhyme, if these were broken up like Earl, that would be kind of an onset and rhyme activity. Okay. And in this case, that's not working. And in terms of the word depend, that's not a great onset and rhyme word because it's a little too much. Things for onset and rhyme are words like stick, onset, rhyme, or stop, onset, rhyme. These words don't really lend themselves to great. Girl does, and sign kind of does, but the way sign is spelled wouldn't be a great one to do with that. So I can cross that out. And silent letters, yeah, sign has a silent letter in it, but the rest of them don't. So that one doesn't work. I'm going to go with phoneme sequencing. Let's read the question to make sure. A student is taking a spelling test and struggling with a few words. Which of the following skills would the teacher focus on when working with the student? Well, we know now that it's B. Notice working backwards helps you eliminate all this stuff. And when you start up here, you lose all the important information. So if it works for you, try working backwards. It really helps. Okay. Let's take a look at number 4. And I have a little explanation with a diagram to go with this. So if I'm looking at my answer choices, work on silent letters, identify R-controlled vowel sounds, blend long vowel sounds, and identify common vowel combinations. All right, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. Let's take a look at the question stem. Which of the following would be most appropriate next step in the teaching sequence? This is classic on any reading exam, whether it's the Pearson Foundations of Reading, the Texas STAR exam, this exam, they will ask you what's the next step the student should be in, or what should the teacher do next? And it says students have mastered consonant sounds and short vowel sounds. All right, pretty much at the beginning stages. What is the next stage of this? Well, we went with short vowel sounds. Well, what's next after that? The best thing here is long vowel sounds. Short and long. Silent letters, those can be more difficult. We're not there yet. Like in the word way. We've got some silent letters there. That's a much more difficult word than the word make. Yes, we have a silent E there, but we're also talking about long vowel sounds first. Then we can talk about why it's long. All right. Right here, we're blending. We're blending the long vowel sounds. Common vowel combinations, this is actually more complex than C because, E, A, O, U, vowel combinations get pretty tricky. So D is too high. And then R controlled, we're talking about IR, ER, OR, those types of vowel sounds, that's even higher. So the best one is C here. And in my book, I have a whole section here that will help you understand easy to difficult. And you can see that R controlled and silent letters are at the more difficult. I probably should have flipped this to make the difficult at the top, but this is the way it's presented. But we start off with consonant sounds and then short, and then we get into long vowel sounds, blending short vowel sounds, long vowel sounds, blending. And you can see how this continuum works here. So again, another continuum of student learning. And so it's really important that we understand this. This is all about, how to be a reading teacher, making sure we're building on each skill. All right. Let's go with number 5. Here, slide 7, number 5, the question. So let's see here. Memorize high frequency words. Now, typically the word memorize, if we're talking about vocabulary, would be a bad word. But when we're talking about high frequency words, it's not a bad word, because we need to memorize high frequency words because they don't follow the rules of spelling and they're all over the text. And so I'm not going to cross off, but memorize, if we're talking about vocabulary, is usually a bad word. Read independently to practice. Well, what did I say about silent sustained reading? To practice. I mean, do we do it? Yes, of course we do it. And it is a good skill. But if somebody's struggling, we're not going to say, go read on your own. We need to support. So I'm going to just cross this off temporarily. Use phonics to decode words. Okay, we do that. So I'm not going to cross that off. Work on students' phonemic awareness. Okay, so A, C, and D are looking good. Let's read the question here. As a student reads, she attempts to decode words like said, want, and would. Which of the following strategies should the teacher use to help the student with this process? Well, said, want, and would are sight words. We shouldn't be sounding those out. Those need to be automatic because they show up so much in text. And if students are trying to sound this out, they're using all that cognitive demand of their brain to sound these out. And I know that many of you as teachers have watched students do this. It is exhausting to watch them sound out sight words that don't follow the rules. And it uses up all that energy in their brain that they should be using for comprehension of the text, that cognitive demand. And so we want to make these automatic. So really, they need to be memorizing high frequency words. And notice, said does not follow the rules of phonics. If it did, it would be said, because the A would be long. Would does not follow the rules of phonics, because it would be wowed. If it did, it's hard to say it because we know what the word is. Okay. And want would be, oops, I dropped my pen. Please hold. Want would be want, if it followed the rules of phonics. So that's why memorizing these are so important. And of course, we don't want them to decode these words. C is out. And this is beyond phonemic awareness because we're actually looking at the words and decoding them. All right. Let's have a look at number 6. Answer choices here. The teacher is using incidental vocabulary instruction. Okay, love it. This is a good word on the exam. Well, what is incidental vocabulary? That is using vocabulary in context. Also a good word when we're talking about vocabulary. Why? Well, we don't want to teach vocabulary in isolation. We want to use it. We want to use it in our everyday speaking with students. We want to help them use it in sentences when they're writing. And so we want it to be an authentic use of vocabulary. So in context or incidental, it's happening incidentally. That's going to be good. So A, I like. All right, let's look at B. The teacher is using systematic vocabulary instruction. Okay, that's cool. I like that too. I'm going to leave it. C, the teacher is using accidental vocabulary instruction. No. And I know this sounds like a silly answer, but those of you who have taken teacher certification exams, you will see kind of these nonsense answer choices on the exam. So C is out. There's no such thing as accidental vocabulary instruction. I mean, I guess there could be some happy accidents when you're teaching vocab, but it's not really a thing that we talk about. So cross that off. D, the teacher is using direct vocabulary instruction. Okay, direct is explicit vocabulary instruction, which also goes with B. B and D are sort of the same. I'm going to just cross them off a little bit, but let's read the question first. Let's start up here. Students are talking loudly as they enter the classroom. The teacher says, please avoid horseplay and loud chatter when entering the classroom. It causes cacophony and sets a disorganized tone for the rest of the class. Well, that's a mouthful. Normally teachers are like, hey, knock it off. Just get in here and sit down and be quiet. But in this case, this teacher is going on and using lots of words like avoid, horseplay, cacophony. And students would probably say, if they were my students, they'd be like, what's that mean? And then you could have that conversation with them about what a cacophony is. And in this case, it is incidental vocabulary because it's an incident that happened. And now we can have a discussion on what cacophony is. That's why A is the best answer choice here. All right, let's go to number 10. So skipping down a little bit to number 10, let's take a look at the answer choices. Differentiated instruction with targeted interventions. Well, what did I talk about in the beginning? Those good words there. We want to make sure we're looking for that. So A's got all the good words. I'm going to circle it there. Partner reading to focus on key vocabulary words. Great strategy. I don't hate it. I'll keep it. Comprehension games for maximum engagement. This is a problem here. It's the games. Now, do we use them? Yes. Students love them. Use games. But on this test, we want to be more sophisticated in our approach. And so C would most likely not be the right answer. And D, whole group memorization strategies. No. Now, if we're talking about sight words, yes, but whole group memorization strategies, we're all together memorizing something. I don't know. D doesn't look good to me. Let's read the question. Several students in class are struggling with comprehension skills. Which of the following would be most effective? Well, differentiated instruction with targeted interventions. Now, people get caught up with the activity, and that's why they might say, well, B is a good one. B is a good one, but it's asking what is the most effective. So make sure you're choosing the best strategy. And usually when it comes down to 2 or 3 possibly correct answer choices, the right one has that set of good words in it. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. All right. And here's a big one that you'll see. You can see this is very much full of a ton of information and can overwhelm you as a test taker. This is where working backwards is really going to help you. So let's have a look at A. The teacher should have the student focus on spelling because spelling is phonics and phonics is a necessary part of comprehension. Well, that is true. That's not bad. I like it. I mean, spelling is phonics and phonics is part of reading. You got to have phonics to have reading comprehension. So I'll leave it. B, the teacher should have the student take a diagnostic test. All right, collecting data there. And then have the reading coach work with the student. Okay, so notice I have a good word paired with a bad word. Reading coach. And my reading coaches out there, you are not a bad word. We appreciate you so much. But on this test, we're not supposed to choose you. Lo siento mucho. So on this, we want to make sure that we're not relying on the reading coach. It's happening in our classroom. But if we are having trouble, you should always contact your reading coach because they have lots of information to help you with stuff. So B is out because of the bad word in there. C, the teacher should use a running record. Okay, more data collection to record the miscues a student demonstrates during 1-minute reading. Okay, I like this. This is a fluency read, a running record. The student reads to you. You are kind of ticking off where the student miscues or messes up. And then, we can evaluate that. But the only problem with C is that we're not doing anything with the miscue data. This would be a good answer if then we had a discussion with the student about the miscues, or we use the information that we got from the running record to make instructional decisions. I'm not going to cross it off, but I'm not going to circle it. D, the teacher should focus on fluency and automaticity strategies for the student because proper fluency and automaticity will reduce the cognitive demand needed for decoding, leaving more cognitive space for comprehension. Okay, let me talk about this one for a second. When students are struggling to read, and I talked about this in a couple of questions ago, they are using so much cognitive energy and cognitive demand that it's hard for them to get through the whole passage. We've seen it before. They're sounding out every word. You can see their little minds just like smoking because they're working so hard. And so automaticity strategies and fluency strategies, they help students get automatic. So they're not even using that cognitive demand on those sight words and those easy words. When a big word does happen in the sentence, then they can use their cognitive demand there. And that's why we want to free up cognitive space, because the freer the cognitive space, the more room there is for comprehension, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to comprehend the text. All right. So I love D. Let's read the question just to make sure. A student is struggling during reading. The student often stops when encountering high frequency words and tries to decode them. This interrupts the reading and makes it difficult for the student to understand meaning in the text. Understanding meaning in the text is comprehension. Which of the following interventions should the teacher employ? Well, here you could, A is a thing you could do, and C is a thing you could do. This is where you might say, well, all of these could be correct. But D has got all the good stuff in it, and it references comprehension and metacognition, cognitive demand. All right. So that's why D is the best answer there. Now, in this one, D is the longest answer. That doesn't always mean it's the right answer, but it is the longest one here. Okay. But that shouldn't be your decision. You should be looking at substance rather than length. All right. All right, let's take a look at number 14, skipping ahead a little bit. Let's look at the answer choices. Use a linking word activity to help the student achieve sentence variety. Okay, in writing, sentence variety is a good word. Why? Because we want students to have variety in their writing, so it's a pleasure to read rather than it being very robotic. So A is looking good because it has sentence variety. Let's look at B. Work on punctuation worksheet. Nope. Bye. I don't even have to read any further. Diagram sentences to help the student understand prepositional phrases. Okay, diagramming sentences is a good writing activity, especially if we're talking about grammar instruction. So I'll keep C. And D, work on modes of writing so the student can improve persuasive writing. Okay, different modes of writing, meaning cause and effect, narrative, expository, persuasive, chronological. Those are your modes of writing. Those are really good when we're teaching writing skills, and writing is a big part of reading instruction. So D is okay. I really like A because of the sentence variety. Let's have a look at the question stem. Which of the following activities can the teacher use? Okay, can't do anything there. Let's go to the main part. Julie and Mary go to the same school. Julie likes math. Oh, it says July. I need to change that. Sorry, guys. Julie likes math. Mary likes reading class. Julie and Mary have been friends for a long time. Notice how robotic it is. And then it asks, which of the following activities can the teacher use to help the students with his writing? Well, here, using linking words like and or also would help to give this sentence variety. It's looking a little too robotic here. A is the correct answer. All right, number 15, this is our last multiple choice, and then we're going to move into the constructed response. But before that, I'm going to take questions if you guys are asking them in the chat because I can't see them right now. Number 15, which of the following is most important for students to consider when they are writing? Oops, I forgot to work backwards. Sorry, guys, let's work backwards. The ability to adapt communication in relation to audience, task, purpose, and discipline. Okay, another good word here. Knowing your audience, task, purpose, and discipline is a really, really important thing when you're teaching students writing. Pretty much all the time, this focus on the audience is key. Who are you writing to? Are you writing to a friend? Are you writing to a senator? Are you writing to the principal? Are you writing to your grandmother? This is all going to affect what mode of writing you're going to use. So you're writing to your grandmother. What kind of structure are you going to use? Well, they're probably going to use a narrative because it's a letter to the grandmother. Now, if I'm writing to the principal, I might write an expository or a persuasive. That's why audience is key. And then, of course, task and purpose comes in. So A's got all the good stuff for writing. Let's look at B. The ability to use transition words to give writing variance. Okay, other good word here. Writing variance. I like B also. Keeping it. C, the ability to use proper grammar and punctuation. C is good, but when we're talking about the beginning stages of writing, we want to talk more about A and B and less on C. Now, you know I'm a huge grammar snob and I love doing grammar videos, and it's really important that we teach grammar explicitly so that people understand that grammar is like a mathematical equation, that there are rules, and it's very easy to figure those rules out and how to use them. However, when we're talking about student writing, I don't like C as much as I like A and B. So I'm just going to put a little X on it. D, the ability to organize paragraphs so the writing has continuity. Okay, that's good too. We are talking about elementary school students, so that might be a little advanced, but I'll leave D, but I like A and B the best. Let's read the question here. Which of the following is most important for students to consider when they are writing? Well, the most important overarching thing is to figure out your audience, task, purpose, and discipline. Transition words are important, but they're not the most important. We have to figure out who we're writing to and why we're writing to those people in order to figure out how we're going to structure it. So that's why A is the best answer there. All right, let me go back to my screen here. All right. What is meant by phonological processing, Harold? Okay, so this is in the book as well, towards the end of the book, I believe, or towards the end. Let me just have a look here on what page so I can send you a reference there. You know what? I'll just do a Control F on my study guide. Give me 1 second and I'll let you know what page number that is. Phonological processing. Okay, yeah, it is on page 16. So let me share that with you really quickly because that's in my book. And so that's on page 16 of the study guides. And that's when students use phonemes to process spoken and written language. It's basically just using your phonological skills, phonological awareness skills. You're putting it all together. And so when we are doing things like blending and manipulating sounds in words, when we are using alliteration, when we are talking about this little diagram here that I went through at the beginning, that's all phonological processing. It's the process the brain goes through to go through phonological awareness. And so it's just kind of more of I drill down a little bit in it here, but that's part of it. Now, you're also going to be using your phonological working memory, where you're storing that information about phonemes and phonological awareness in your brain. And that all has to do with phonological processing. But it's basically the process the brain goes through in order to do that. And so if you do have the study guide, it's on page 16. There are some questions about phonological processing on the exam. I mean, I don't know what questions you're going to get on the exam, but there might be some of those. All right. That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. The last continuum graphic you showed belongs to phonics. No. So let me go back. This continuum is actually considered phonological awareness, but remember that phonics can fall under phonological awareness. Now, here's the key where people get a little bit mixed up. They'll say, well, phonics isn't about phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is about sounds only. But the way it's presented on this exam is that phonics is sort of a sub-skill of phonological awareness, because if we are to look at syllable segmentation and CVC words, there's a bit of phonics in there as well. And so when we're talking about phonological awareness, I've been doing this a long time, and people have their own opinions, but I say phonics is under phonological awareness. It is a separate skill. You are decoding, and it's letter sound correspondence, and phonological awareness is focused more on the sounds part. But if you're looking at onset rhymes, which can be done, just through sound, but when you're thinking about CVC, VV words, things like that, you're talking phonics as well. It's kind of mushed together, but this is actually a phonological awareness continuum. This is this is phonemic awareness, sounds only. And this, you get a little bit more advanced into the phonological awareness. All right. And that's in the book as well. Where can we find activities for certain skills? Some of the practice test questions I have gotten have asked for an activity to use to help students' needs. Do you have any videos with activities based on certain skills, foundational skills, decoding, vocab, etc.? Yeah. So in the book, let me go here. Okay. In the book, I have a whole thing. There are some tables in there. So there's tables in there that talk about read aloud, think aloud, word sorts, clapping games, segmentation, deletion activities. In the book, there are all these things listed out depending on the skills. So if we're talking about phonics and phonological awareness and stuff like that, there are activities in there. But when you're thinking about the test, just make sure you can separate those skills and be like, okay, is this a comprehension activity or is this a phonics activity? Is this a phonemic awareness activity or is this a fluency activity? Usually on the test, they're kind of broken up like that, where they're, if you're working on phonemic awareness, it's going to be thinking about the sounds and words. You're not going to be doing a fluency activity. So knowing the skills really well will help you with that. What is systematic vocabulary? Okay, so a couple things. Sarah, thanks for your question. When we're talking about systematic instruction, we're talking about explicit instruction that has steps, right? So an example of systematic vocabulary instruction might be something like, let's say we're looking at a word and we're already into the phonics stage here. We're already into the morphology stage here. Okay, so we're past, if we're doing vocab, we're past phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, and we're moving into the meanings of words and things like that. So a systematic vocab instructional activity might be something like, okay, I have a word here, and maybe it's something like unbelievable. Let's say the word's unbelievable. And so what I might do is have them look at the word, and I might say, okay, let's break this word down by affixes, prefixes, suffixes, and roots, right? And so they might chop off the put it to the side, and put the word believe in the middle and able at the end, right? And so now we've broken it up. Okay. And so now we might say, okay, what does mean? Means not. What does believe mean? This means that. What does able mean? Okay, when we bring it together, right? Then we might use the word in context or see it in some reading. And we might do that. We might draw a picture to talk about the word. We might do a word wall activity. We might do a word sort. So notice that we started with breaking down the actual word into affixes, and then we moved into more complex. So systematic meaning a system is happening in place. It's explicit, and there are steps involved. Okay, and there can be systematic phonics instruction, systematic fluency instruction, systematic math instruction. It's just following a system. Okay, thank you, thank you. Can we only study 10 days to pass this exam? Yeah, sure. But I really recommend you read the whole study guide. There's people will sometimes email me and say, I don't know how to answer this constructed response question. And I said, well, did you read the beginning of the study guide? Because all of the information in the beginning of the study guide will help you with your constructed response, because you're going to have to pull strategies. I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're not done yet. I'm already over. Sorry, guys. Please read the whole thing. But yes, you can totally do it in 10 days. And if you don't pass, you've seen the test now. You can go back in, study, and get it. Not everybody passes their first time. It's all good. Timothy, when do we use targeted instruction? Okay, so here's the steps, right? You've got a class, and they all have different ability levels, right? So you are collecting that formative data I talked about. You're observing, you're collecting exit slips, you're talking to kids, you're watching them read, and you're seeing they're messing up on certain words. You're going to then figure out who needs what. Okay, this kid's struggling with phonics. This kid's struggling with fluency. Then you're going to target those kids. So if it's phonics, I'm going to do a targeted activity on phonics. If it's fluency, I'm going to do a targeted activity on fluency. And the way I make those decisions is through my data analysis. You could also get a printout of their diagnostic test. Maybe they took a diagnostic in your classroom for reading. A lot of reading teachers have it. The kids take a test on the computer, and you get a printout basically, or a screen of where they're low. And so you say, okay, these 5 kids are low in vocab. I'm going to take them and I'm going to bring them over here, and we're going to do some explicit vocabulary instruction. These guys over here are good, but their comprehension is a little down. I want them to be better. All right, let's do some comprehension activities over there. That's targeted. Okay. Is there a difference between prior knowledge and background knowledge, or would you say they're the same? Great questions, you guys. These are good. Prior knowledge and background knowledge are the same thing. It's also called schema. And basically what we want to do is we want to activate that prior knowledge or activate that schema or background knowledge before we read complex text. Now, there's a little bit of debate on this of how much we should activate that, because there is a side that says what we end up doing is we give them all the background knowledge, and then they don't have to read the actual passage, right? So we want to go easy on that. We want to make sure, hey, have you ever been to the beach? Well, this passage is about the beach. What do you know about the beach? Oh, I make sandcastles at the beach, or I see kite surfing at the beach, and then we have a discussion, and it gets the brain moving, and they start to activate the sounds, the smells, the situations of the beach, so that when we read it and we see a complex word, we're more apt to understand it because we're in the beach mind zone. All right. So that's good. But background knowledge and activating prior knowledge, very important on this exam. And if you see it in an answer choice, it's probably correct. Not worried too much about the time. Okay, so that's somebody talking to somebody else. What is data driven? Data driven means you're looking at test scores and you're looking at your formative assessments and making decisions. So you're constantly observing students, using exit slips, looking at their test scores, looking at their fluency reads, and making decisions based on that. Okay. Can you please explain morphology? Okay. Morphology is breaking up small meanings in words. So what I just did with that word unbelievable, and I broke off the believe, and the able, that's a type of morphology. Or breaking down compound words, sidewalk, right? A sidewalk is on the side of the road. So breaking down side and then walk, you're walking on the side of the road. It's when you take pieces of a word and you're looking at specific meanings inside that word to have the overall word. So like phonemes are separate sounds in words. Morphemes are separate little meanings in words. And that's all covered in the book too. Do we need to be specific on a targeted assessment and the writing portion? Yes, I'm going to do the writing portion now. Can the coupon offer be towards anything? Yes, the offer code you're going to get after this webinar, and I'll just tell you what it is. It's READ20, READ 20. You can use it on anything. Are you going to be doing any summer or fall review sessions? Yeah, I'm going to be doing live webinars like forever, so I'll have more stuff. Typographic features. So think about this. Typographic. Those are going to be letters and different features that have to do with graphics and type. So typographic features could be something like, let me give an example. Let me go to my book really quick. Hang on. Tell you what page it's on. Typographic. Oh, got orthographic. Let's see here. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find it in my book so I can point you in the right direction. I don't know if it's in there. I have orthography, but not typography. So anyways, basically it's the laying out of a word, the design type, capital letters, if a word is underlined, if, I don't think indentation wouldn't be considered there, but when we're reading and we have different typography, like in a textbook, you'll have like a bigger letter or underlined or headings and things like that. Those are really important to show students because it helps with their comprehension. Would it be helpful to make study cards for the reading vocabulary? Yeah, absolutely. I would even make study cards for the good words list at the end of my book. That would be really good. Orthography. Okay. And orthography is on page, in case you have the book. Hang on. Orthography. I'm trying to find what page it's on for you guys. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Talk amongst yourself. Well, it's probably lumped in. I can't find it here. I'm trying to find it in my book. I only have it in an answer explanation. But basically, it's the conventional spelling of a word. So let me go to my study guide here, and I'll just share it with you. Let me go to a screen, entire screen, share. Okay, we should be here. Okay, so let's take a look at number 17. Let me zoom in. This is in the book. Okay, number 17 here. Okay, so you can see that we have this particular question here. Which of the following strategies is the teacher using here? The teacher gives students the cards below and instructs them to put them together. And so you can see that these are broken up by syllables, right? If we were going to do orthographic mapping, we would be working on the way that they are spelled. So we might have a card with an F, a U, a T, a U, an R, and we might be putting them in order of the way they're spelled. That would be orthographic mapping. So it has to do with the conventional spellings of words. This particular one, you can see they're broken up by syllables. Future, fantastic, complete. complete. That's why it would be syllable manipulation. It's not clapping syllables because you don't need the cards to clap syllables. Syllable manipulation is going to be pushing those cards around. Let's see here. I think I've got another one. Oh, here's one that encompasses, sorry, it's going too far. Give me 1 second. Here's one that encompasses morphology and orthographic. So right here, we wouldn't choose orthographic because look what we're doing here. We are taking the root, believe, unable, and we are breaking them up by prefixes, suffixes, and roots. This would be a morphological analysis for those of you who asked me about morphology, because we're breaking down pieces of the word and going, you can see here, not able to believe, able to bend. We're looking at the different pieces in the word and basically subscribing meaning. And remember, morphology is individual meanings in the word. And in like unbelievable, there are 3 meanings. Basically, the un is not, believe is believe, and able is the ability to. So unbelievable is not having the ability to believe. Okay. All right, so let me go back. Let me stop sharing here. Now we're going to go through the writing. I'll try to answer some more questions. Somebody's asking me about a coupon code on Amazon. I can't give coupon codes on Amazon. It just doesn't work on KDP. I would if I could, but I can't. So if you want to buy it on the cheap, get it from our website. But, a physical copy, some people prefer that. It's okay. You're asking questions. I like questions. Will you do a similar YouTube video on constructed response only? I have so many videos on constructed response. I'm going to show you at the end of this where you can find it. Okay. Let me go to my constructed response now. All right. Let's just have a look. I'm going to quickly break it down for you. And I'm only going to do one today because we don't have time. So you're going to have 3 of these. All right. Now, when we do the constructed response, you got to work backwards on this too. Don't start here. And if it's a longer scenario, and I shortened this up a little bit, you will get short ones like this, but you're gonna forget things. So go straight to the question. Now, some might be short like this. You might have one with a data set. It doesn't really matter because all you have to do are these 2 bullets here. Describe 2 strategies he can use to address the reading deficits during his science block, and explain how these strategies will improve student reading skills. So what I'm going to do here, and I recommend you do this when you have a constructed response like this, this is going to be 2 paragraphs. The first one is going to be the first strategy. The second one's going to be the second strategy. And inside those, as I describe those strategies, I'm going to make sure to hit this. You got to do both things in order for you to get full credit. All right, let's have a look at the actual prompt. Mr. Payton is a 3rd grade teacher who has several students struggling to read content area. Should have had a hyphen there. Sorry about that. Text and science. He notices that students struggle with domain-specific vocabulary and comprehension of complex text. Describe 2 strategies he can use and why you're using them and how they will help the kids. The thing is, the book has all kinds of strategies in here. Read aloud, think aloud, word sorts, word walls, morphological analysis, fluency reads, metacognition analysis. I mean, there's so many things you can pick from. You don't need all of them. You just need 2. And what do we have here? We have domain-specific vocabulary. So that's going to be your tier 3 words. Domain-specific means words like mitochondria, words like plasma membrane, words that are specific to science, okay? And then comprehension has to do with metacognition and understanding the text. All right, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to map it first. So here's my map. Here's my questions, just so you guys can reference it as I'm mapping. Well, right away, it says domain specific. So I know I need to focus on tier 3 words. So that's strategy number 1. But I got to get specific in my constructed response. I can't just say, I'm going to focus on tier 3 words. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to do some word sorts and we're going to do some root word analysis because science has a lot of Latin roots. And so I could also call this morphological analysis or morphology lesson. Or you could just say root word or affixes, whatever you want to do. If you don't know the exact word to say, it's okay. You're not going to fail this part of the test. But basically drilling down to root words is going to help with scientific specific vocab because Words like homogeneous, heterogeneous, those all have Latin roots, Latin prefixes, suffixes, and it's going to help us understand that, okay? And for the sake of this, it's an easy thing to write about, all right? So strategy number 1 is focusing on tier 3 words or domain specific. And 2, for comprehension, I'm always going to work on metacognition. Now listen, guys, if you get a different one and they're struggling in comprehension, you can use what I'm saying here for metacognition. This goes, and you can use this for any vocabulary. It doesn't matter. They're just giving you a specific scenario. All you have to do is choose 2 and then explain how it's going to work. All right. So now let's break it up here. And I understand there's a lot of words on this, and I'm not going to read this to you because we're online. But what I want to do is show you like why the, oops, I want to zoom in. Oh, I can't really zoom in. Sorry, guys. It's going a little wonky, but let's have a look at paragraph 1 here. All right. So I talk about because they're suffering or because they're struggling with domain specific words, I'm going to use tier 3 vocabulary strategies. So what did I do? I named my strategy right away. I don't go around the world and have 40 intro sentences. You don't need to do that on this. You don't need an introductory sentence. Just state what you're trying to state. I will do this. Or if it's a teacher, he should do this or he could do this. Okay. And this is going to happen before reading the text. Now I get into, well, what do those strategies look like? Now I got to dig down deeper. So we're going to do this by breaking down words using affixes because science involves words with Latin roots. Using this type of structural analysis is breaking down the word. You could also say morphological analysis or morphology exercise will help students understand the parts of the words. And then I go one more. I could have just done this. You could just do that and you would be fine. But I wanted to have a couple examples here for you guys. You could stop there and you're good because what did you do? You identified, let's go back here. You described one of your strategies and you explained how it's going to help. So did you satisfy that for the first strategy? Yeah, you did. And you could even stop right here at there and you'd be fine. And I'm giving you a little more here because I want you to have more examples. Next, the students can engage in word sorts, another vocabulary strategy, and separate words into categories. For example, in biology lessons, notice I say, for example, in biology lessons, students can separate words into plant cell categories and animal cell categories. I just got really specific there. Why did I do that? Because you get more points when you're specific and you support what you're trying to say. If you're too general, you're not going to get as many points. And then I go ahead and wrap it up. These pre-reading vocabulary strategies will set students up with the skills necessary to understand complex text with domain-specific vocabulary. So I could choose either one of those things. You don't need both. Again, I'm using it because I want you to have. But did I satisfy my first task here? Yes, I did for the first strategy. Now I have my paragraph 2 for the second strategy. Well, they struggled with vocab and then they struggled with comprehension. Okay, so paragraph 2 is going to be my second strategy. I'm not going to talk about my first strategy. I'm going to keep it separate. This is only strategy 1, and this is only strategy 2. Don't intermingle them because you'll confuse the grader. Make it easy on the person grading your essay. So I say here, to help students with their comprehension of complex text, Mr. Payton can use, here's my strategy. Boom, read aloud, think aloud. And I have that in the book. I use that strategy all the time. I have a bunch of videos on it on YouTube. This activity helps to increase students' metacognition. Throw that word in there. Metacognition is how you learn to comprehend text. It's called thinking about your thinking. As Mr. Payton reads the text aloud, students can stop and think aloud and show students how to process this. This type of modeling demonstrates to students how to use their brains. Again, I'm explaining why I'm using this activity and why it's important. I'm satisfying that second bullet. And then why is it good? This strategy will show students what to do when they come to difficult parts of the text and will increase comprehension and free up cognitive demand. Did I meet my 2 things here? Yes, I did. This would be full points, most likely. I mean, I'm giving myself full points, but 2 quick paragraphs. And again, you don't have to go into as much detail as I did. All right. Now we're getting towards the end here. Okay. let's have a look at, some of you have questions about extra stuff. Somebody was asking about constructed response. So I got a lot of videos on constructed response on my YouTube channel here. So my YouTube channel is full of stuff, and I have this teaching reading playlist here. So here you're going to find videos for the teaching reading, the foundations of reading, the STAR exam, look at phonemic awareness. This one has gotten so many views. This is one of my oldest videos, this phonemic awareness, phonics, and phonological awareness. It's like when I first started, and people love this video. There's an old teaching reading webinar in there you can check out, but this playlist has got a lot of teaching reading stuff. Okay. Now, I just did one on the constructed response, and let me sort this by newest. There we go. This video here on this playlist is all about the reading constructed response, and I go into it in a lot more detail. All right. Now, if you want even more constructed response, if you go to playlists, you scroll down, I have 6 videos on, just different types of constructed responses. So I have a ton of stuff on my YouTube channel. I also am on TikTok, and I share shorter videos there. I just did one on metacognition today. I got stuff about research papers. I'm trying all different content there. And then, of course, our YouTube or our Facebook page. Okay. Now, where can you get the book? Let's go to that. So if you go to KathleenJasper.com, this is the homepage. I've got this banner here, but if you scroll down, you can click study guides here, or you can just go to the menu, go to study guides 5205, and Praxis is so crazy. There's so many different names and numbers of tests, but here is the study guide. You can do the digital copy. It's a PDF. It's emailed to you, or you can just click this button and go to Amazon, and you can get it here. We have a ton of 5-star reviews. People use this book for all kinds of reading tests. So teaching reading, foundations of reading. If you're taking a reading exam, the concepts are covered here. Remember, you want to understand all those concepts, okay? So you can get it 2 ways, on my website and on Amazon. I have lots of stuff on YouTube. I have more online courses for all different kinds of certification exams. I am just about to publish a Praxis middle school reading English language arts 5047. And I'm also almost done with my Praxis elementary ed 5006, 7811, and 5017. I think that's it. Yeah. And so that's coming out soon in the next month. So I have a bunch of publications coming out in the next month. So I've been really writing a lot and doing these lives and things like that. So let me take a couple more questions and then we'll go. Can you go back to the paragraph just really quickly? I was just taking a quick note. Sure. Well, here's what I'll do for Susan. I'm going to send you those last 3 slides for my constructed response, and I'll send those to you in the email. So give me about an hour. This video has to populate, and then you're going to get an email from me, and I will send you those last 3 slides or 4 slides so that you have it and you can take notes on it. Okay. How do I get to your YouTube videos? You just go to youtube.com. You can search my name. If you Google me, you'll see it there. It's on my website. You can click on my website and just go into YouTube and search Kathleen Jasper and I'll come up. I'm sending it to everyone, Kathleen. I'm going to send it to everyone. I'll send it to everybody's going to get everything. So don't worry. Do you have a rubric that the graders use to grade the construction response? Yes, I have. Okay. So let me talk really quick. Let me share my screen one more time with you guys. I have to make sure everybody's questions gets answered. So let me go back to my study guide here. So in the study guide, let me go to constructed response down here. The constructed response section in my study guide is very comprehensive, and I have sample. Oh, where's my, hang on. Here we go. So here is the constructed response section. And you can see that I go through what the rubric actually means. So a response should, and then what that means to you. And so I go through, I have, the test tips and things like that. Let's keep going down. I have my constructed response here, and then let's go here. I have like a sample constructed response for you and what a score of 3 would look like, and an evaluation, why it got a 3. All right. So that's really important. So I have the rubric in here. I simplified it a little bit, but the rubric is also, let's go to here. The rubric is also in the study companion. Let me go back to their constructed response questions here. Oh, do they not have the rubric in here? Let's just see real quick. Here's the rubric. This is the rubric for, you want to make sure that you've answered the question accurately, the question completely, things like that. But I break it down into more specifics here, where I talk about so here it is right here. A response should clearly and specifically answer all parts, show strong knowledge of concepts, theories, and facts. Notice that when we did the constructed response, I talked about metacognition. I talked about tier 3 words. I talked about breaking things up in a structural analysis. I talked about cognitive endurance. Those things show that I have strong knowledge of the concepts and methodologies of teaching reading, and then provides a strong explanation supported by evidence. For example, this will help students do X, Y, and Z. So that's all here if you need it. Okay. Let me go back, stop sharing. Okay. Thank you for the webinar. My pleasure. Thank you for coming. The new books coming out will be available on Amazon. I'm hoping that they'll all be available by the end of May. I'm working like crazy there in edits right now. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Thank you. Read 20 is the offer code. Somebody bought the book and it's amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So that's it. I think I covered everything I was going to cover today. Make sure you get the book. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel. I'm probably going to be building an online course for this. I just haven't had a chance because I'm working on some other things. But you can use my YouTube channel as like an online course with the book. The book plus the teaching reading playlist is like a good combo. Lots of people pass this test, Foundations of Reading, the STAR exam, by using the book and the YouTube videos. All right. When will you do a webinar for special education? It should be coming up, hopefully this summer. All right, guys, thank you so much for spending your day with me. I'm going to go take a little break, and then don't forget to be on the lookout for that email. It will have everything in there for you. I really appreciate you spending your Saturday with me. Have an awesome day. Bye.